And I remember that he fell asleep before I even said the first word. And I talked to God and I said, God, I don't really know what I'm doing, but you told me that the energy is within me. And whatever he needs, I want you to do it for him tonight. Break what needs to be break, take away what needs to be taken away from him. And I remember I went to bed after that. And the morning when I wake up, I went to work and he called me. And he was complaining that his mom just called, but while his mom was trying to talk to him, someone else was crying in the background that their father just passed, whether during the night or the early morning. And he was getting mad that he wanted to talk to her. And I was like, okay. So I remember that the voice in my head said to me, I thought it was me. But going back over, I realized that it was just God speaking. And it was like, Keisha, why did the same night you prayed over your husband, this man died? And I'm like, shut up, Keisha. Because that's the way I be. I'm like, shut up, Keisha. You talk too much foolishness. Why are you? How the hell did you get over there?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Melting Pot episode. Today, I am in conversation with Takisha Purcell. Takisha is talking to me from New York, and I'm in Barcelona, and I'm really, really looking forward to this conversation. Takisha is an author, and she has something very interesting to share with us, which I'm really looking forward to getting deeper into as the conversation goes along. So thank you for joining me today, Takisha.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, Takisha, let's start with, maybe we should backtrack and start with your background a little bit, because I understand you are from Jamaica. So which part of the island are you from, and when did you move to the US, and what was the transition like?
So I was born in St. Mary in Jamaica, but I grew up between St. Mary and St. Catherine. Yeah, so I don't know. I was split between two homes. My mom and my dad were together, but my mom still lived with her mom during the week when we had to go to school. And then on the weekends and holidays, we would go visit our dad, which was more busy and fancy than, at my grandmother's house. But my mom and my dad never, get along. So they were always fighting and stuff. And my mom, moved away when I was about 6, 7 years old. And, we lived with our grandmother for a while, but then she passed away. So we moved to live with our dad, call it full time, but it's like we were sleeping at our grandmother's house, our other grandmother's house, and eating at our dad's house. And, it was just unstable.
Okay. And so at what point in your life did you move to the US?
I moved to the US in 2014. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I came to visit and, I met someone and he asked me to stay. I did. And it was just a whole nother set of problems.
Oh, good Lord. Okay. Anyways, let's just, yeah, let's talk about spirituality. And you have mentioned that you had a spiritual awakening in 2022. So, what was that awakening? What did what kind of triggered it? That's one. And two, was it something that happened gradually, or was it something that just happened instantaneously? So, just a little bit about how it happened and why, and what were some of the emotions that you experienced during the course of this transformation or transition or whatever you may call it.
Well, I guess I was always a little bit careful of how I lived my life. We grew up in a Christian environment, and I was, baptized as a kid, even though it was against my will because I didn't even know that was what I was signing up for at the time. And I had a lot of inner voice, and I always speak to myself on the inside, but my life was happening. I had this other relationship back in Jamaica that was very unstable. It was back and forth, before I came here, then we broke up, then back together, then, it was a roller coaster. But he had a lot of issues where, just bad luck, I would say. And he was very angry about, simple things sometimes, things that I couldn't understand at the time. Like, why could someone, be mad about stupid things, And but I've always been, I think in 2019 I started getting into motivational speakers, and I started, I had watched The Secret of Deliberate Creation. I'm not sure if you know about that, but it helped me in 2000 to be mindful that we could create the life that we want to live. So I was always mindful about how I was living and the things that the thoughts I had. So with all of that, I started questioning the Bible around, 2020 going down. And I was like, some things in the Bible just didn't make sense. And as a kid, we knew that these things didn't make sense, but you couldn't question, these things, especially in the open. You had to keep these questions to yourself because you were taught that, you couldn't question God. And I think I started being like, God, if you are my father, why would you punish me to ask questions? I think you should be able to answer me. And that's how I started. And I was speaking to my friend about it. And I'm like, you have to forgive me because I don't know any better at this point. I have no one else to ask. And I was like, if there was only two people in the world, and, how come, where did these other people come from? And it doesn't make sense. The story doesn't add up. And I remember I was watching an Instagram post one day, and it said, if you wanted a spiritual awakening, you should watch these 3 movies. And I remember that when I was just sitting there, and but I only remember the name of one of the movie, and I couldn't find the clip anymore. And I looked it up on YouTube, and I bought the movie, and I watched the movie. And when I finished watching the movie, I didn't really get it, but a documentary came up immediately, and the voice inside me said, just watch the documentary. So I started watching that documentary, and it was so interested that I was just there, and I was so in tune. But I remember that when the documentary was just about to finish, I guess the great secret that everything that they were adding up was that we are all God. But I remember that when they said that we are all gods, it hit me in a different way. It was like it broke open something inside of me where I just started weeping. I was crying. I felt love. I felt seen. I felt appreciated. I felt things that wasn't normal because I've been on the earth like 30 something years, and I've never had this experience and this feeling. And I'm like, what the hell? What is going on here? And I felt so comforted. And I remember that I was crying, and I was shouting to my partner that we are all gods, but we're an aspect of the creator. And, we're not supposed to be living, in such turmoils, and we're supposed to be having the best life on earth. And I remember that I was in the kitchen now, and I had like a download. It was all of a sudden I knew things that I wasn't supposed to know. And it was like, the voice was telling me that it wasn't that Jesus Christ was more special than anyone else. It was that he understood who he was. He healed himself. He did the work. And that's how he could have healed the sick or raised the dead or whatever, people would say. And I was like, I cursed. And I was like, what the hell? You mean to tell me that I have the same power that Jesus Christ have? And it was like just so crazy. And I remember that I was crying, but I felt so loved. The love that I felt is nothing compared to what we think is love. And I remember that I felt so good within, like 2 weeks. I felt like I was so holy. I didn't think anything else could have gone wrong from that day. But eventually, that faded away. So, yeah.
Okay. And so do you think the environment or the culture, because you were in Jamaica and then you moved to the United States, so obviously the environment is very different. So do you think it limits or it expands the ability to question beliefs?
It expanded everything in my life because all the tools that I had access to being in the United States, I would not have had none of those tools in Jamaica. I don't like to read, so I was listening to audiobooks and I was learning things and I was understanding things and I was like, wow, that sounds like truth. So it's like I was learning all these things and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And I was able to change my mind from the things that I thought was, truth. And by changing my mind and questioning more and asking and being open to telling God, that I realized no, because after that journey, I realized that I didn't know anything at all. And I'm like, God, I need to know you for myself. I no longer want anyone to tell me who you are. I want to know you for myself. And that's how it led me to a lot of experience. After that, that was just like a tip at the iceberg, because what happened after is like crazy. And yet still the journey is not ended. It's still going and there is more to come.
So, what are some of the experiences that you don't mind sharing?
Well, I've had experience like, solving mysteries in my life, people doing witchcraft on me. My partner was one of them that when I saw him in Jamaica before we knew each other, and I saw him in distress, like he had accidents all his life. He's been having a lot of accidents. And as I said, he had issue like just being stable in one job. Like he loved to work, but he just couldn't keep his job. Or if it wasn't about him, it would be about someone else. And, just a lot of problems. And I remember that one day I was, he was arguing about something different, but I remember questioning God about the relationship. And I said, God, all my life I've been out of relationship for less than this. Why do I continue to be with this man? He doesn't get life. He doesn't understand things. The things that I think might be simple to him, it's like big, it's a big deal. And I'm like, yeah, why am I with him? It doesn't make sense. And I was taking a shower and I remember the voice in my head said, you are here for his purpose. And I was like, what? And the voice said, you're here for his purpose. And I'm like, so what about my purpose? And the voice said, well, you could say you're here for his purpose and he's here for yours. And I remember from that day, I was so comforted by that, but I was still curious as to what that purpose could be, because I'm like,
correct.
it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. Even I'm telling everybody around me that God told me I'm here for his purpose, but what that purpose is, I don't know. But I remember, fast forward about 2.5 years, he had an accident. As I said, he's always having accidents from he was a kid. And I remember that he had this accident and in May, and he came home crying, and I was laughing because I don't know why I laughed, because I realized that I wasn't reacting to life the same way since God has been changing me, because I was going through a lot of other things where I was just puking and just having realization with my past, with my childhood, with the traumas, and understanding all of those things and what it does to the human body. And so I was clearing all of those energy and started being more connected to God. So I remember that when he came home crying and I was laughing, but I remember that it was that I was saying it's not that serious, and God is going to reveal to us, something big, what's going on, because it doesn't make sense to me that now that I am really living the life that God wants me to live, God is going to give us things to tear us down. It must be something bigger. And I remember that night, we went to the hospital, we came home, and I prayed for him. And I, like the voice in my head said, pray for him. And, he lied down and I started praying for him, and I started, just pulling things from his body. I didn't know what I was doing, because I've never seen anybody do anything, but I'm just working with my mind and my heart. And this is what was coming to me. And I started doing it, and I started brushing him down. And I remember that he fell asleep before I even said the first word. And I talked to God and I said, God, I don't really know what I'm doing, but you told me that the energy is within me, and whatever he needs, I want you to do it for him tonight. Break what needs to be break, take away what needs to be taken away from him. And I remember I went to bed after that. And the morning when I wake up, I went to work, and he called me, and he was complaining that his mom just called. But while his mom was trying to talk to him, someone else was crying in the background that their father just passed, whether during the night or the early morning. And he was getting mad that he wanted to talk to her. And I was like, okay. So I remember that the voice in my head said to me, I thought it was me, But going back over, I realized that it was just God speaking, and it was like, Keisha, why did the same night you prayed over your husband, this man died? And I'm like, shut up, Keisha, because that's the way I be. I'm like, shut up, Keisha, you talk too much foolishness. Why are you? How the hell did you get over there? But I remember that passed, and he hung up and he called me back, and he said to me that another cousin called to confirm that the grand uncle had died. And I remember that the voice come back again, and he said, and I was saying to him that you guys need to forgive, you need to just let go of the past. And I remember the voice in my head said, Keisha, just listen. And I remember he was starting to get angry, and I was starting to tune into the phone because everything was happening at once. And I got a vision of this man when we were young, and I was passing by. It was like I could see myself, I could see him talking to someone, I could hear what he's saying, and it was so clear. And it was like the voice said, why did you know this man in his pain before you even knew his name? And I was like, what? And I remember that I started investigating. So I came home and I called his sister and his mom. Only his sister answered. And I was like, how long has he been having accidents and problems and stuff like this? And she was like, oh, so many times. And I remember that he was sleeping. He woke up in the night, and his cousin called, and the sister was on the phone, and we were on this four-way conversation. And I remember that we were talking, and while we were talking, God had revealed to me that when he was a kid, that same person that died had a grandson that had a bike that he was riding so carelessly on the road that the grandfather told the mom that if you want to save his life, you need to take this bike away. It's going to kill him and a lot of things. And that bike was given to my partner as a kid. Oh. And that bike transferred the energy on him that caused him. And God, that's what God had revealed to me. So after that, we continued talking. But while we were talking, God came back again, and God said, the same man that died was using your partner energy to extend his own life. And the night that you prayed over him, the curse was broken. And that's how the energy flipped back at him, and he passed away. He was in his 90s, I guess. So he was an old person, just trying to, I guess when we grow up without love and understanding, we get involved in a lot of witchcraft and demonic things. And this was what God was showing me. So by me praying with all the energy that I now have of changing my own life and trying to be on the good side, because with not everybody is able to do everything on this earth, because their understanding that you have to have their spiritual powers, and there's a lot to it, and you have to get to understand it to know what it is. So these are the things that God has been teaching me.
And how is it aligning with the people around you, the people that are a part of your daily life? How do they respond and react to this new you?
To be honest, I don't really have a lot of people in my circle. A lot of people has fallen away because of how the awakening is. And I was never someone who had a large, following or anything like that. I was always by myself. But the few people, I guess people don't really understand it. The people that are around you, they won't totally get it. But my partner now, he's understanding, not that he's able to control his own self, because there are a lot of demonic forces that inhabit us on earth, and there's a lot of things that we have to change in our own life to be able to understand certain things and see certain things. So even when Jesus was here, the things that he was saying, people didn't believe or understood it, because you have to come out of the crowd, the place that you were born, the people that know you as who they think they know you as. They won't understand it at first, but that's the thing. God is going to take you to that level where it doesn't even really matter, but it's a frequency thing, and we're not on the same level of consciousness. So we have to understand that. There was a time in my life that I wanted to get baptized and be a Christian, because that's what I was taught, that Christianity, and in order to get to heaven, this is how you had to live your life. But with that spiritual awakening, now I realize that you don't even need to go to church. Like, you have so much power within you that you're supposed to be able to heal the sick and do the things that Jesus did. You understand? But because we don't know these things and we think that, oh, Jesus is so special that we will never get the understanding of what it is.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about your book. So, what inspired you to write the book? And the title of the book for everyone is Understanding the Truth About God Written in the Hearts of Men. So, what one is what inspired you to write the book? Second is what is the core message that you are hoping that the readers will take away from this book? And the third is, was writing this book a part of your healing, your personal healing process?
Okay, yes. So it was what inspired me to write. I didn't even know I was going to write a book because I just, I'm having these different experience and things was just happening in my life. But I was always questioning God because I was knowing things and I was learning things about, the society, the world we live in, and the darkness, the hidden darkness in the world. And I was very afraid. I was like, God, I don't want to die. I have children. I don't want to get them killed. Like, the people that are at the top that are doing the evil things, they can kill me. And I was so scared. So I wasn't thinking about writing a book or anything like that. But as going through the process over and over, and the more God healed me and changed me and teach me things, I was like, yeah. But I remember that one day I was, going around the house and the voice in my head said, Keisha, now you write the book. And I'm like, what? So I'm like, okay, so I'm writing a book. So I started thinking about it and it was like, wow, I have a lot of things in my brain. So I just got to work and I started writing the book. So I can tell you that I know nothing that I'm doing is just because before this awakening, I could not have written a book. I didn't go to school. I know nothing about nothing, but this is what God do, and this is how God wants to show people what he's capable of. You understand me? So, and when you read this book, you never believe that this is the little girl from Jamaica that wrote this book, because that's what God do. You understand me? It wasn't me. And I can't take any, praise for this book because all the experience, and I've been having my memories since I was a little girl. Like I had all those memories of childhood and I didn't even know why I had all those memories, but I kept going over them and always talking about my past. So, some of it is about the things that I learned and the life lessons that I didn't even understand at those age. But now I'm able to go back and be like, this is what caused this and this is what happened. So
yeah. No, that's fascinating. That's so. I mean, the whole process has actually changed you as a person, and now you're able to reach out to so many more people and get them to connect with
go
them.
with him. Get them to go with him because it's so easy. But it's so hard at the same time. It's like before I knew God at all, it was like I had these set of rules that I had to live by, and I had to go to church. And this was the thing that I dread. I dread going to church since I was a little kid because I thought it was so boring, and I just didn't want to sit there when at night, especially, it just put me to sleep. And I'm like, but they told me that if you don't do this, you're going to burn in eternal fire and these things are going to, and I'm like, oh my God. So it's like you're being an hostage. But when you find God and you realize that God is like a friend, and God, you can joke around with God. God is not stush. God will talk the dirtiest things. Like I remember that they stole my car one day, my rental car. And I remember that God was telling me that the people at the rental car company, they were involved in a car stealing ring. And God was telling me, we're going to find the car. And I was telling all of these things to my husband. I remember that I didn't even know that these things exist because, we've been taught that we have 5 senses, but we have 15 senses. And when all my 15 senses start to work, I'm telling you, I can pick up things. I can read people's mind. I can go in people's heart. I can feel oh my God, some things that God has opened me up to. I'm telling you, it's no joke. And I remember they stole the car, and I went into a restaurant not even knowing that, the guys that were there was trying to do their Uber Eats or whatever. So I saw them with a phone, and my husband's phone was in the car when it was stolen. So I
Oh
thought
my
they
God.
were going through the phone. So I was sitting there so nervous, trying to say, God, what's going on? Did they steal a car? Is that my husband's phone they're looking through? And I remember that I just sat there and I said, God, if I'm here and I'm doing the wrong thing, just give me a sign. Give me a sign that I'm here on a wild goose chase or something. And I remember one of the guys turned around immediately and looked at me and be like, something so goddamn nasty and disgusting. I wouldn't even bother to repeat it. And I remember saying, what? And the guy that was sitting there that understand more English, he repeated it. And I remember that I jumped up out of the chair and I walked out and I'm like, God, I'm not playing with you. I'm not playing. And I remember that months later when I was trying to figure out how do I move through life? What is my personality? Because I've been through so much. I've been thrown into slavery. Like I've gotten so much things happening to me, things to make me hungry, things at the system, things about life, things about parents. Everything was coming at me so hard. And I don't know how to act now because I'm like, I'm supposed to be holy. I'm not supposed to hate anybody. I'm supposed to love. But at the same time, you're showing me so much dark things, like you want me to be mad. So I was there and I'm like, how am I supposed to act? Am I supposed to put on my heels and my skirt, my long skirt, and just be like, oh, and I remember that same memory came back to me with that nasty thing that the guy said to me, and I'm like, oh my God, you're a funny God. You are not stush. You are not that type of person that they try to hold you down to be, this, person that wants to take control of everybody and tell you how to live your life and tell you, oh, you have to live by these certain amount of rules. I could be free. I could curse, not curse at people, but if I'm speaking and we have our Jamaican bad words and that's not what God is about. That's about the system trying to control you and make sure that you don't understand yourself. And these are the things that God started to show me. And I had to just be myself. Like I had to go back to my childhood and remember how I used to act before people told me that I was wrong about myself. I was wrong and I had to behave a certain way, to be accepted. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is amazing. I mean, obviously you've gone through a whole cycle in your life which has which has gotten you to a point where you're able to have all these energy, you're able to channelize all your energies, and you've, I mean, a spiritual awakening does not happen that easily, and when it does, then you have to really you have to absorb it, and you have to be able to do good with it. No, I think Takisha, it's just been very, very interesting listening to you. And if anyone wants to pick up your book, how can they do that? That's one. And if anyone wants to reach
It's
out to you,
available at Amazon. It's
okay,
available at Amazon, so you could there are three version of it: the Kindle, the hardcover, the soft copy. So yeah, it's
okay.
available at Amazon for now.
And what's next for you?
Um, I'm just waiting on God and the spiritual team because I realized that I'm not really in charge. I just have to just be ready, and that's what I am. I have enough within me. I've started doing healing, so I know that is for real now. Like so. That's the next thing because at first I thought that okay, you could do these things or whatever or know or understand these things, but then when you understand that you also have this frequency with healing that you can help other people, to clear the heart chakra and stuff like that. God has revealed to me that a lot of people you see that get heart attacks and stuff like that is because of the trauma and the built up energy that is within our body and lodged within our heart chakra. So I've been doing stuff like that to clear the energy, and yeah, so I've been doing a lot, and yeah, so that's I am just here waiting for them to give me the next signal as what is next, but I guess sky's the limit.
Absolutely. Sky is the limit. So, sky's the limit for everything, really. You just need to, you need to have that belief, and you need to, whether it's spiritual or otherwise, you need to have that belief that sky is the limit, and whatever you want to do and achieve, it's possible to do that, but you just
Listen,
have to,
if I
yeah,
don't
you
believe be the one to
first,
tell anyone that if I could really do a book, like
yeah,
it's times it's like nothing to me because it's like I
yeah,
didn't do it and I don't think I'm capable of doing it. But I know the energy and where it comes from and how much we can do when we get to embody that energy. So I
absolute, yeah,
understand it all, you know.
absolute,
So
yeah.
I'm really humbled by this whole thing because I remember like growing up, I used to ask God, like, why didn't you make me into someone who has the brain to become a lawyer or a doctor or something? Like, why did you make me so slow in life? I'm slow. I was slow in school, and I'm like, maybe you have a bigger
But you
plan
had
for me, a bigger,
exactly. So there was a
you know.
higher, there was a
So
higher
I've
vision
always
for
just, I'm
you.
like, if I had gotten into those things, maybe I wouldn't have had, you know, the quest to question anything. I would have been in a different era. I'd be okay with money, so I wouldn't be asking for money. Maybe I'd be asking for other things, and I wouldn't have gotten the things and the experience and all the things, you know, that I've been through in life. It's like everything was so helpful, even though when you are going through it, it's like so crazy, and you're like, what? But when you go back and you
Yeah, and
look
you
back, it's
question it and you say, why me? But then there's always a reason and a purpose for it.
like, yeah.
Anyways, thank you so much. Thank you for this conversation. I'm sure the listeners and viewers are going to take away a lot from it. And I wish you all the very best for what's coming next for you. And I'm sure a lot of good things are going to come your way and sooner than you think. So you take care and have a wonderful day. And it's been lovely talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Bye bye.